All right, good afternoon and welcome to the City Council Finance meeting of Thursday, June 20th, 2024. Three items on the agenda. The first of these is a discussion regarding shopping carts.
Shopping carts, a favorite topic. A couple years back, the subject came up as it related to the consideration of maybe adopting an ordinance that required shopping cart providers keep those carts on site through various technologies. Currently in Norman, a couple of those technologies have been utilized by Aldi's grocery store. Theirs is a system where you come in and put in a deposit, you drop a quarter in the machine, it lets you take a cart out, and when you bring your cart back, you get your quarter back. Homeland, one of the Homelands, has installed the invisible fence around the parking lot and a device on each cart so that if you attempt to push your cart off-site, it locks the wheels and turns it into a boat anchor. Both stores report that cart theft has been eliminated. We met with Walmart managers. Walmart is one of those nationwide vendors, and they operate in several states that have such a requirement. And our local Walmart manager said, if you guys adopt an ordinance, Walmart will send money from corporate and they'll install that technology at all the Walmarts. Some of our smaller retailers are saying, man, that is a big expense. And it's really, it could cost $40,000 to $60,000, depending on the size of the parking lot and the number of carts you have, to install the technology. So they were really hoping such a thing would not become a mandate of the city, and requested, well, is there some kind of incentive that might help us offset the cost of installing such technology? Currently, the shopping carts are completely unregulated, and as you see shopping carts strewn around town, we get phone calls in the Action Center, the police department, the fire department, my office, Jason's office, Chris's office, and they tell us where these shopping carts have been abandoned, and we send around people and pick them up and take them to the yard and try to contact the owner. Most of the carts have some visible insignia as to who owns it, and we may call the wrong Walmart, but it's a Walmart cart. We've had conversation about the ability, and one request was, if you see somebody pushing a shopping cart down the street, why can't you arrest them for being in possession of stolen property? And it sounds easy, but what we don't always know is, if it's a Walmart shopping cart, which Walmart was it? And will that Walmart press charges against this individual for, they're not saying he stole it, but he may be in possession of it. And a shopping cart's valued at $400+, so could be an expensive enough asset that would require such a police response if requested by the property owner. Then we find ourselves operationally with, well, the police officer's not gonna load the cart up in the back of a radio unit and haul it back to the store. So we still wind up with this abandoned shopping cart and probably the person in possession without the ability to pay a ticket or anything like that. So there isn't really an easy answer. We didn't know if council members were hearing complaints or seeing more shopping carts in the last couple of months than maybe the months before. If there was an easy answer, I'm sure the question would have already been answered and we wouldn't be dealing with shopping carts. But we wanted to see if there is any desire on council's part to pursue any particular path.
When that discussion was happening with Walmart, didn't Walmart tell us that if we called them, they would pick up any blue-handled?
And they're pretty good about it. But it's our labor to go out and pick them up and deal with the mess inside the cart. And typically when we find them, they're full of something.
Yeah.
And then we incur the expense of labor and manpower thrown in the truck, taken out to the corp yard. Walmart does eventually come and pick them up. They're never at the right store because one Walmart manager called us and said, what have you done with all my shopping carts? I'm down 300 carts. And we said, call your buddy. He's up 300 carts, I can assure you. So they don't really have them tied to a store specific. It's just kind of Walmart in general. And they eventually do come and pick them up.
Would you have an estimation of how much we spend picking up carts and doing stuff?
I don't know if I think we've been trying to keep track, I was looking for Jason, he's been having all kinds of fun today, about the numbers of those types of responses we've had. And it may be a thing that I'll send out a report to council if we've been keeping track of the numbers. But I get calls from businesses all over town. There's just a shopping cart out there on the sidewalk in front of my business, and we try to get them picked up as quickly as possible, just so it's not an impedance to somebody in a wheelchair, and it just makes Norman a cleaner place when people are showing up to visit, just to not see shopping carts strewn about town.
And we've had some that the wind pushed into traffic. I remember that was about a year ago, somewhere on Robinson. They'd gotten off the north side and pushed down into traffic, and that caused a confusion. Anyway, yes, ma'am.
I was thinking about, I'm supportive of an ordinance, but I was wondering about a tiered one, like Walmart's gonna have, what, 300 plus carts?
Yeah, they could have 500 or 600 per location.
What is the number of carts these smaller retailers have? Is it like 100?
A Homeland's probably closer to 100, and, a Dollar General could have 20.
Okay.
So they're definitely strata of
So you
the
could
impact.
say if we did an ordinance, the first rollout would be retailers of a certain size, people under a certain amount have until X date to figure out their finances. I was gonna say too, I think about it from the city side with staff, we were talking about all the challenges. I feel like overall, even the smaller ones should see the value in it, because if it wasn't staff picking it up, it would have to be one of their employees, and let's be real about Dollar General, that's not happening. So, they would waste money and staff time sending people out to go get this. So over the long haul, you would think, even if, and honestly, I'm gonna say for Dollar General, they also have a big corporation that's raking in tons of money and lawsuits against them for not paying well, among other things. So they could pay to put geolock on their parking lot. But that said, I also understand that people who take the carts are not always well, even though they might be physically strong, and they push the walking ones out of the parking lot. I have seen that, and my neighborhood cleaned one out of our original town site neighborhood. So I wouldn't want to penalize somebody who did the geo-walking if somehow their cart managed to get outside of those bounds. And I would, again, think if you're a store that's slightly protective, it's like I'm following the ordinance. And so maybe, also, what happens to the ones that they don't want to pick up? Because some of these get really damaged, chewed up wheels and whatnot. Is it on us to dispose?
We wind up hauling them off to the landfill, and it's just not the kind of thing you want to try to bury.
And
Some
that's
of them
an
are plastic
expense
with a
to
bunch of
us.
steel in it, and the taxpayers overall wind up covering the cost of lost shopping carts. We're cleaning up a storm drain channel down at Lindsay. When you think about a shopping cart getting stuck under a roadway in a storm channel, and all the debris that stacks up quickly, and it's the potential for real danger from plugging up our storm drain channels. It's a real issue, a real danger and concern.
Well, I'm in favor of an ordinance. I would consider like a rollout. So I know Dollar General is like one example, but I recognize there could be other smaller retailers for whom they don't have a corporate office with millions in the bank, who could write a check as easily.
Mr. Olson did have an interesting suggestion that you could roll out a thing asking each of the retailers that provides the cart, please submit your plan, how you're gonna keep your carts on site. And it's not one cart, it's all the carts over and over and over again, and it's not getting better, it's only getting worse. And let them choose their maybe technology or some other, tool, whatever works for their customers, whatever works for their budget. But you submit your plan and tell us how you're gonna do it. The geofence may be great and easy for the big retailers like a Walmart, but Aldi, they're a much smaller retail, and they installed without any request their shopping cart program, and I'm sure that little device inside the store is probably much more cost effective than the geofence. And let them pick the plan that they
So an
would care to
ordinance
administer
that
to.
requires a shopping cart plan.
Retention
Site-
plan.
Yeah.
I like the idea of that for sure. I'd like to see what other cities that have done that, what their ordinances look like as far as, do they have tiered approaches? Do they allow leeway for different methods? Which again, I do like the idea of that. And speaking of the cost of what it takes for us to currently collect them and hold on to them and all that, I mean, if we could see what that total is, maybe we can come up with an incentive, maybe if some places can't do it or need help doing it, instead of us spending the money to clean it up, could we figure out a way to allocate some funding to an incentive program to get them to do it?
And it'd be a one-time expense. Those systems seem to last long, long time. So yeah, it wouldn't be an ongoing expense to the city, but the cost avoidance of us picking up the carts would be an ongoing cost
Yeah,
avoidance.
because I also see them in the most random places where it looks like somebody pushed them and then just left them like on a corner with nothing in them anymore. But they're not in like front of a house. They're not in front of a place that somebody went inside of. It's like they just decided, right here's where I'm going to stop, grab my stuff, and I'm going to keep walking and leave it. And so I see them in the oddest places, but I haven't been seeing them stacked up at the OU Motel recently, and that was a big
Or at Sinclair.
drop-off spot.
Oh,
So
yeah.
I feel like I've not seeing more of them lately, seeing them still, but I don't know if I'm seeing more or less, maybe just the same. But
I think that may be the efficiency of Jason and Chris's crew out getting them removed as quickly as possible.
yeah, I mean, and ideally, businesses like Homeland take it upon themselves and do it on their own, or Aldi, and don't have to be required to. But if it's an issue and it's costing everyone to clean it up over and over again, then got to figure out some way to address it.
I like the tiered approach in a way too, that, because I don't want to penalize businesses for being the business. And Walmart has, you know, they collect up those things. I've sat there and watched them.
Yeah.
They keep on doing it. But it would be, I think, a good plan to have them. What's your plan? You follow your plan. If it doesn't work, then something will happen. But unfortunately, the people that are hauling those things off may not be mentally stable enough to understand what they're doing. They may not know that that's wrong or whatever. And we certainly can't find them because there isn't anything there to find.
Yeah, the collection would be another challenge.
And that's more money, so. And then that ordinance would also have to have us do something with the stuff, whatever's in those carts. I would think that would be remanded to the dump, but then again, you think about the person, and that may be all they own in this whole world, whether it's dump worthy or not. in
How to
our
track them
opinion.
down and
Yeah,
find out who it belongs to.
and vermin or anything else that could be in there, so. We'd have to think that through, is to, I guess, claim it and do something with it. Yes, ma'am, I'm sorry.
Yeah, I agree with what all of you have said, the points you've made, and I'm in favor of pursuing an ordinance, something that makes sense. And that has been like my number one concern, is seeing the shopping carts, getting into the streams and the flooding and the blockage that you mentioned. Yeah, that's like one of my big concerns, but yeah, I'm in favor of that. Yeah, so.
It may be, $15 in labor and, vehicle time for one of Jason's people to go pick up a cart and get it back to the courtyard. If it's under the street lodged in a storm drain system, it may be $25,000 to
Yeah.
get crews to get in there and haul out
Oh, wow.
the material that backed up against the cart before it was discovered we had a problem.
I've hauled bicycles out of there and truck tires and all kinds of other stuff that people stuck down the storm drain. And you go down there when it's raining and you got 4 or 5 inches of water on the surface, and you pull that thing out of there, and now all of a sudden you're in the middle of a flood. Yep. Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, I was gonna ask when we get some more, research into it, could we also maybe get an estimate on how much we're doing as far as cleaning? Because it sounds like a widespread potential cost, but maybe you could see monthly what that averages out to.
We will assemble that data. We'll get you a cost estimate of costs incurred currently, and that would be the cost we would potentially use as an incentive, and then be able to start saving that money back once the plan's implemented.
Is there no way to recycle them? You'd think that there's enough wire in that it'd be recyclable.
We tried.
That's Chris.
And they
We
won't
took
do
it
it.
to the recycling center and they said without the permission of Walmart, we can't accept this metal. So they have to have the permission of the owners because they don't want people out stealing them and then bringing them to the recycling center.
We have an agreement, you think, with Walmart, like if it was a part of the plan?
Yeah, I
It's
think
like-
potentially we could say, if you've implemented your plan and we still find a cart,
And
we need
it's
you to sign
not
this because it's getting
rehabbable.
recycled, or, you know,
Yeah.
we'll come up with what happens after the fact, because carts could still leave the property.
What you would more likely than not have to do is declare them surplus.
Oh,
Now, when we get bicycles and things along those lines that the police department gets that we don't have the owner for, generally you have to provide notice to the owner that you have it and tell them it's here to come pick it up. If they don't come pick it up, council can declare it surplus, and once council declares it surplus, then we can dispose of it. I don't know if we've talked to the people at the metal place to say, if we bring you an order from the court, because when we declare it surplus, we have to file an order, have to file an action in district court. The district court will issue an order declaring it surplus. That may be something that the metal shop would take to say, okay, now we will take these and recycle them because we've got this order from the court saying that this is surplus.
well, you start chewing on this thing and it gets bigger.
Yeah. And
Well,
hopefully,
It's a lot of
if, you know,
process.
if the plans are implemented, the number we'd be dealing with would be a much smaller number.
I would agree. I would hope.
I'd ask the city attorney's opinion about the idea of this, you know, give us a plan, sounds fine. The idea of asking them to put some sort of a device in sounds okay, but I'm a bit concerned about this idea of us paying them for those devices. That sounds a bit like we're gonna pay for your security system, or we're gonna pay for your, you know, anti-theft. I don't know that we can do that.
Yeah, I think that's something we're gonna have to be careful in our drafting, is to make sure that we can verbalize or include in the text a public purpose
Can
use
we-
of those funds.
Yes, sir.
Can we incentivize someone or something to comply with a city ordinance? Is really what I was kind of getting at. It's this discussion, but it could be anything, I guess, like, are we allowed to incentivize a business to comply with a new city ordinance?
Is cost avoidance to the taxpayer a public
Right, I
benefit?
mean, there may be a way to get there, you just have to be careful that we can connect the public purpose to the expenditure of the funds.
The ordinances do exist all over the country. The incentive component, I don't know if that exists, but it's definitely worth doing some homework on, and then the tiered approach for, you know, those multinational companies they'll, you know, expense the cost of installing that hardware on their tax return, and Walmart will survive, I'm pretty sure.
and Dollar General too.
And, you know, the lion's share of the carts we do find, they have blue handles on them, and that's because there are more of those shopping carts in Norman than all the other shopping carts put
So I
together.
definitely see the most.
Well,
Kind of the real.
and you go down to Big Lots with those yellow carts, and they're out of they're not in the parking lot very long, and I think that's the thing. It's a strange thing, but when should we expect to revisit this? Do we want to put it back?
If you can give us 30 days, we'll check
Easy.
incentives, and we will check that tiered implementation strategy, if we can find similar language to bring you. And when Mr. Olson brought up the idea about, you know, if you ask them to submit a plan to you, how they intend to keep their carts on site, I think they will look for solutions that do fit their budget, their cart volume, and, you know, their customer too. So we'd love to have their participation in coming up with our own solution.
I don't want to insult them. You know, obviously, we have to do something that's for the public good, but I don't want to insult them in that. So 30 days is great. Can we put it back on the agenda then next?
We don't have any committee meetings in July.
Oh, that's true.
But in August, we'll
August.
put it on the finance committee agenda in August.
That works. Are we done with that topic? Is everybody?
We will proceed, thank you.
All right, thank you, sir. Item number 2, discussion regarding the monthly revenue and expenditure reports.
really don't have much to add. I will just respond to any questions that you had. As you saw, we had a pretty good June sales tax return that got us right to flat for the fiscal year as a whole. But other than that, I would just respond to any questions that you have.
We would just chalk that up to the amazing revenue projection capabilities of Mr. Anthony Francisco. When you get it that darned accurate, he'll tell you, we get lucky sometimes, and he nailed it. Yeah, he always told me, when you look at the sales tax numbers, if it starts with an 8, that's a good sign.
We don't ever track use tax, right?
Yes, we do.
We do?
Yeah, the monthly report that we give you is sales tax and use tax.
Okay, got it.
Next tab over, yeah.
Next tab. Okay, I missed that.
Boy,
I thought
that
about
use
that when
tax
I was
has
sitting
been
there
growing
reading
at
it.
We were up 14% for the year.
that's
Well,
one
not so good for the month, but for the year.
Is that a continuing shift from sales tax to use tax because of internet sales?
I think there's a lot of it, yes.
And we keep promoting to folks, really not that much difference between Costco and Sam's Club. If you've been in one, you've been in the other. They operate the same. They sell the big bulk stuff. But if somebody needs to buy something from Costco, just have them deliver it to your house and we get the use tax. So, I give Brooks Mitchell, the Moore City manager, a hard time about that every time I get an opportunity.
Get him. No, I didn't see anything that looked out of the ordinary when I was perusing it prior to this. Yes, sir, I'm sorry.
Oh, you're fine. So the city-to-city comparison, that's for the whole year, that wraps up the year.
Yes.
And so negative 0.24% year-to-date change. Is that when we finished just slightly below?
Yes, just slightly
Just
below.
fair, really. But we did, like you said, we had a 2.56% May, or June as it is written here, which was the third highest. Moore had a negative 4.07%, and they finished the year at negative 1.94%. Midwest City finished negative, and the state finished negative. And so, I think we're doing pretty good compared to other cities, it looks like, on this anyway, overall. And so, one question I did have was was about the depot. I guess they didn't submit a proposal for additional funding, and I was trying to recall, we did not approve any additional funding, is that right?
That's correct.
And so, they could request that at any time, or they don't have to wait till next year?
Yeah, and the normal process is that they
And it was
request it
regard
with
to the
budget,
train
but-
service part that we had talked about.
Yeah.
They actually did get an increase in funding. There was an additional increase discussed, like, for night service. But you approved their initial increase, just not the additional increase that was discussed at that finance committee meeting. And I don't have the numbers with me, I apologize, but I feel like they request like an additional 30,000 or
35.
something. And that was what was included in the fiscal year 25 budget.
That's what we approved. Okay, I was just trying to clarify that for.
And just to, are you done?
Yeah.
And just to add to that, I think they said that the night service, they needed to do more research on their end before they could give us a number to consider, so.
Was that because the gentleman didn't want to get paid, that we were talking about making sure he got paid because he's been there, he's a tremendous individual, I wish I could remember his
He wouldn't be the
name.
one working, so they would need a person, and it wouldn't be just for an hour to like, because the train can be delayed, so it would be you potentially could be there for several hours, and they would have to pay consistently. So they were like, we need to research more into what we might be able to do. And so they didn't really have like a cost for providing that extra, she had a name for it, Sherry. It was like a waiting, like, you're in a waiting phase, basically.
On-call time?
Something like that.
So, kind of an interesting idea, and right now it's Amtrak traffic. And sometime during the 2025 calendar year, the RTA question will be available for council to put on a ballot. If Amtrak service, we think will continue to expand based on the federal government's investment on connecting us up to Newton, Iowa, or Newton, Kansas, thank you. And then you add RTA, commuter rail volumes, and we have 3 station stops operating full-time. We'll have that conversation with Edmond and OKC to see what kind of service like that, if any, would be a component of that RTA. I mean, somebody, if there are services provided, if there are restroom facilities, et cetera, somebody's got to service that.
Yeah.
We'll need to account for that. So glad we're having that conversation.
Nothing's simple, everything's got fur growing out of it somehow. But those are at least good conversations, except for, you used to do the train, do you still do the train?
Yeah.
How often is it late compared to it?
It's never late southbound.
Got it.
Because we're the first stop, but it's almost always late northbound at night.
Because then you're the
And
last
that's
pickup.
what Councilman Grant is talking about. You know, it's because you don't know.
Yeah.
It could be, it's usually a half hour or so, but there can be some times when it's an hour or two late. So,
Oh.
Wow. And then it only takes you to downtown OKC, right?
yeah.
Yeah.
That's, for me, it's how many beers do I have? But,
That's the timing system.
Maybe we need to serve beer in the depot.
yeah.
I don't know, they say serve beer in a
Way to make
funeral
revenue.
home, so. We can,
No, I mean, adjacent, the
Yeah, yeah.
brewery or someplace, Winston or someplace nearby. So.
yeah. Any more on discussion for Anthony and expenditure reports or income reports? All right. Item number 3, internal audit programs update. She behind?
Hello, everyone. Good afternoon, council, city of Norman public. Okay, so last time we spoke, I updated everyone as to the risk assessment process citywide. So we're still ongoing with that. At that time, I had completed meetings with finance in all of its divisions. Thankfully, they were very collaborative, so thank you, Anthony. Human resources also has been complete. I just finished before I got here with information technology. Great source of information from all of those talented folks. I have legal and police next week on Monday, so the objectives, the process, of course, is I started with the IC assessment, right? I sent out the IC assessment to each department, asked them to fill it in. That information was used to basically be implemented into the RA, or risk assessment process. So when I meet with them, it's, hey, this is the information that I ascertained from your IC assessment. Let me know if there's more information to be added, if you want to modify this information, if you want to take it out. You know, I don't do your work. I can't perform your job, and I won't pretend that I can. But the information that I get is insightful and more valuable when it comes from the people doing the job. So right now we have, after Monday, we'll have Public Works to complete, fire, Parks and Recreation, utilities, and last but not least, the city manager. From that, we will have the triennial audit plan, which will have 3 years of audits that I hope to be able to complete, conduct, or at least start. And then, of course, improve the operations, enhance the compliance, and you know, the financial statements of the city of Norman. If there's any questions regarding that, I'm here to field them.
What about your charter? Is that pretty much smoothed out?
Yes, so Councilmember Montoya said she's going to give me her edits, so I'm waiting for those. Oh, we have them.
And council, we want to share our appreciation for Shakira's patience.
Yes.
Since everything we're talking about is brand new, and she sent out the risk assessment, fear set in, because we had never seen such a thing. What does it mean? And what if I don't know the answers to these questions? And we broke up into little groups, and individual departments met with Shakira, and she kind of talked them through it, let them know this is how it works. And it's okay not to know all the answers to all the
It is
questions.
okay.
And for instance, there were questions about security in our IT environment. And I knew enough to say, I know we have one of those things. How it works, you're gonna have to ask Tim, because I don't know how any of that stuff works on the other side of that door. And between, I think, all the departments recognizing what we know and what we don't know, but we think who does know, I think we were able to get her all the information she needed for that risk assessment. But it was a very interesting process. And at first, you might see a question and you think, oh my gosh, I don't have any idea. And then when we met and Shakira was able to kind of talk us through, you recognize, oh, I do know the answer to that. This is how we do that. And we all got there together. So appreciate that, and we'll be in a much better place.
Yes, sir.
And to clarify, this covers all the city departments.
Yes, it's a
At some
citywide.
point, you'll go through the whole city.
Yes.
Does that include really auditing how pretty much every dollar in the city is spent, or where it's going, or who's getting it type of
So
thing?
how it works is the risk assessment is based on likelihood of risk and the impact of that. And that's a number, right? We apply numbers where it's just low, medium, high risk. The operations, programs, departments, divisions, activities, so on and so forth, grants, contracts, those that present the highest risk to the city's operations or the objectives of that department will probably list higher on the possible to audit list. Those who risk lower, have a nice day. Keep doing how you're doing. Keep doing what you're doing and how you're doing it. But how I structured the risk assessment came from the budget book. And most of all departments and divisions have objectives listed in that budget book. So that objective, you get the objective, you start with 3 to 5 objectives, only one of me. I could start with all 7 or however many is listed, but it was the 3 to 5, and the ones that are listed first probably are the most prioritized objectives of that department and or division. From there, I determined or identified the risk and the potential risk impacts, the internal control objectives or the best practice for that to address the risk of, maybe what do we have in place to address that risk so that it doesn't happen, or at least reduce it to an acceptable level of risk, right? So there's risk with everything. Everything that we do, shopping carts, it will have a risk to it. And we spoke about, you all spoke about that. And then from there, we will give it a number of the likelihood of risk and the impact of that risk, whether it's low, medium, high. And then there's 5, and I'm just kind of going briefly through the methodology. There's 5 recommendations that will come automatically from this macro in the Excel that was built. So you have preliminary recommendations will be provided. One is consider moving your resources elsewhere. 2 is no effort is needed. 3 is judgment is needed. 4 is monitor. 5 is must put controls in place, which means that's the highest risk. There's no controls. We need to address that. And that's how I started it, because I could have went by and bothered every director and said, what are your objectives? Thankfully, the budget book is very well thought out and very well written, and the objectives were already supplied to me so that I wouldn't have to bother them more than I needed to.
Norman does punch up when it comes to document presentation. Our budget book, our audit, even our agenda packets. You won't find many cities our size that outdo us in the information we provide in the transparency. And lo and behold, it winds up actually saving us time in other aspects.
Right.
And a lot of what Shakira will do to get to the potential financial impacts is audit us against our own adherence to policies that are designed to minimize that risk. We may have a great policy, but if we're not adhering to it, it's not doing us any good. And Shakira will help us identify where we're deviating from what may be a very good policy to provide risk management.
Awesome, thank you.
I do want to just kind of re-educate the public on the purpose of internal audit and the power or authority of internal audit. So the purpose of the city auditor and internal audit is to provide independent, objective assurance and consulting services designed to add value, improve the city of Norman's operations. The mission of internal audit is to enhance and protect organizational value by providing risk-based and objective assurance, advice, and insight. The internal audit department helps the city of Norman accomplish its objectives by bringing a systematic, disciplined approach to evaluate and improve the effectiveness of governance, risk assessment, and control processes. It also provides reasonable assurance to management and city council that the city's financial and operational controls designed to manage the organization's risk and achieve the city's objectives are operating in an efficient, effective, and ethical manner, and also assist management in improving the city's business performance. With that, I like to say that internal audit only has recommendatory powers. I cannot direct or have any authority over what management decides for their departments or what the city manager decides for the city as a whole, or what council decides to do through my recommendations. They are solely recommendations. You have the power to agree with modification, or disagree in its entirety and go in your own direction. Nevertheless, I will report that. It will be included in my report, and my report will be published on the City of Norman website to the public for transparency and accountability. With that being said, I have reached out to the applicable personnel who is in charge of creating web pages for the City of Norman. So the internal audit webpage will be created hopefully within the next 2 or 3 weeks. And the report that was issued of the subject I will not mention at this time will be available to the public.
Perfect. Questions, thoughts, or additions? Yes, ma'am.
So July is when the new council gets seated, and then we'll be going over all this.
Yes,
Okay.
yes. Hopefully. I'm hoping that I can deliver the triennial audit plan in July, which I believe I will, with the process and the status of the risk assessment as it's going now.
The July Finance Committee.
No finance committee, no committee
that's
meetings in
right.
July.
So it would be like.
Could do a pre-council conference or a study session.
Okay. I was wondering where it would fit in the calendar.
Yep, we'll work with Brenda and figure out how much time she thinks she needs, and we'll get her plugged in.
Or you can give me a deadline and I'll work.
Well, I was thinking,
Deadline driven.
okay, I'm good, thank you.
Anything else? Thank you, council. Thank you, Norman.
Anything else on any of these 3 items that's come to your mind?
Did you know the shopping cart was invented in Oklahoma City?
Yes, sir. You wouldn't have got a beer off of me on that one.
Now, parking meter also?
Also, and the yield sign.
See, center of the universe.
But Okies can't read yield signs.
Oh, my God.
They don't know what that means. Anyway, I guess it's time for us to adjourn. Thank you all for your time.
All right.